Reaching from the Italian border to Saint-Tropez on the coast of the Mediterranean, the French Riviera has world-famous sea resorts which provide unique places for luxury and dolce vita and have been held as a model for other seasides for a long time. Approaching from Italy, Menton is our first stop. It's gained less fame than Cannes or Saint-Tropez and is not so crowded, even in high season, but it proves to be their worthy opponent because of its climate, location, and impressive buildings. Here, 1,600-meter mountains guard the narrow coast, keeping cool winds off. In Menton, where the climate is the mildest on the Côte d'Azur, lemons ripen all year round. Not only lemonade is made from them, but soaps and other cosmetics. In February, the Lemon Festival is held on the model of the Nice Carnival. English and Scandinavian tourists favor Menton in winter, too. The seaside boardwalk is called Promenade du Soleil, referring to the high number of sunny hours. The romantic port bastion is decorated with pebble mosaics by the versatile artist Jean Cocteau. After his death, it was converted into his memorial museum. The avant-garde Cocteau, who lived in the first half of the 20th century, was known firstly as a poet, essay writer, novelist, and playwright, but he made his mark in cinematic art as well, with his films such as Les Enfants Terribles and Les Parents Terribles. As an artist, he was mainly adept in tapestries and mosaics. His murals grace the wedding hall of the town hall in Menton. Roads run up the mountain. You can overlook the whole city from its car parks. From here, Italian and German fascist troops bombed the city during World War II. This settlement belonged to the Counts of Ventimiglia from the 10th century. Then after 4 centuries, they sold it to the Grimaldis. Under the revolutionary atmosphere of 1848, its inhabitants rebelled against the high taxes and proclaimed it a republic. Menton was annexed to France only by Napoleon III. The road surrounding the old town, which is actually a one-span vaulted bridge, was ordered to be built by Napoleon I for his soldiers so they could cross its crooked streets undisturbed and quickly. Formerly, the old town was surrounded by walls, of which only a few remnants remained. The old fort, which stood on the hillside above the Église Saint-Michel and Chapel des Pénitents Blancs, disappeared as well. In its place today, there's an interesting cemetery where different denominations bury their dead on their own terraces. Although the colorful terraced houses of the old town were built between the 16th and the 19th centuries, they give the impression of complete unity. Narrow streets lead to spacious squares full of life. From the old town, a promenade covered in pebble mosaics leads to the Église Saint-Michel, while from the port an impressive flight of stairs. Although Prince Honoré ordered the church to be built in 1618, it was finished only in 1675. This Baroque church interior reflects Italian style. Here can be seen the cross, which was made from spikes seized from the Turks by the Prince of Monaco in the Battle of Lepanto. The adjacent building is the Chapel des Pénitents Blancs. The square in front of the church overlooks the port and the old town. Peter Mayle wrote about the characteristic provincial market where from spring to autumn only locals went, and about the peasants who brought their crops which they had gathered some hours earlier. They admired the French housewife who had no mercy while she was working and wasn't content with only looking at the products. She was in direct body contact with them. She squeezed the aubergine, smelt the tomato, broke the pea pod in two, tasted the cheese and the olives. But if something didn't meet her requirements, she stared at the stall keeper, suggesting their betrayal, and then turned round to go shopping elsewhere. They bought red peppers to fry, basil, peaches, goat cheese, lettuce, and French red onion. When their basket was full, they crossed the road and went to buy half-meter-long bread because they liked soaking up the oil and dressing left on the plate with it. Of course, they also sell perfumes and soaps made with lemons grown here in Menton, as well as herbs de Provence and little sachets of lavender. Lemons, olives, and lavender can be found everywhere as a pattern on linen, which are made into tablecloths, curtains, and clothes here in the area. The tablecloths go well with the ceramic bowls, plates, and pitchers, which are decorated with similar patterns. These make, of course, good presents and can be supplemented by a watercolor landscape or a vase with sunflower pattern. Parallel pedestrian zones lined with shops lead us to the Europa Palace. There are underground garages below the streets which swallow the crowd of cars accumulating in the city during the summer. A part of the castles and palaces have become hotels, but some of them are also retirement homes, housing primarily American and English retirees. The center of the new town is a square built on a slight slope and full of flowers. Beauvais Park was a former ravine where melted snow passed from the mountains in spring, and nowadays the water goes through a covered gutter system. Earlier, it was the casino situated in the Palais de l'Europe that attracted art fans, but since 1951, it has been the famous biennial art exhibition. Furthermore, Menton is famous for its classical music events, and in the Municipal Museum, you can admire works of Cocteau, Chagall, Picasso, Modigliani, and Rodin. A new casino has been built on the south side of the park. The Pebble Beach has plenty of room for sun worshippers and stretches from the casino all the way to the Cocteau Museum. Despite its independence, the little Principality of Monaco is an integral part of the Côte d'Azur. It has no frontier stations, nor its own currency or language, and its territory is only 1.5 square kilometers. The number of its inhabitants is not more than 3,000, but every year more than 2 million tourists come and dive into wealth and luxury. Many acquire citizenship by naturalization, buy flats, and establish companies here because this mini-state is a tax paradise. The casino, which made Monaco famous, opened in the middle of the 1800s. It was the brainchild of Prince Florestan I's wife and son, Prince Charles III. The new building was built on the Plateau des Spélogues and since then has been called Monte Carlo in honor of Prince Charles III. Its designer was Charles Garnier, the architect of the Paris Opera House. They soon imported François Blanc, the great master of the German spa Bad Homburg, and this marked the beginning of the golden age of the mini-state. One of Monaco's main attractions is the Monaco Grand Prix, held every year. During its 75-year history, it has had supporters and opponents, but one thing's for sure, without this race, the sport wouldn't be so popular. Spectators literally hang from the windows and balconies during the race. This is the only Formula-1 track which wasn't built for the sake of the race and totally separated from the world. Here, a lively, throbbing city is converted for the race, and on weekdays, you can drive along the very same streets as the famous race car drivers. Monaco's Oceanographic Museum is one of the most significant institutes of its kind. The huge multi-story building has towered on the craggy peak of the Old Town since 1910. It was founded by Prince Albert I, who worked with prominent members of the field, which was a new branch of science at the time. Thousands of fish from all oceans of the world swim in 80 tanks of the aquarium situated in the basement. In the museum, instruments from deep-sea exploration can be seen, such as diving wetsuits, bathyscaphs, and diving bells, as well as several ship models and research equipment. In the 80s, the Institute was under the leadership of the famous Captain Cousteau. The scientist was born in 1910 and served with the French Navy for 27 years. During his long life, he wrote more than 50 books, such as The Silent World with Frédéric Dumas, as well as Diving Companions and Diving for Sunken Treasure with Philippe Diolet. One of his films, The Silent World, won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Festival and the Academy Award. His TV series were popular too. All over the world, millions of viewers watched Voyage to the End of the World, World Without Sun, Cousteau Odyssey, and Rediscover the World. In the Great Hall, there's an exhibit with the skeletons of extinct animals or aquatic animals still alive today. A part of the museum was endowed by Prince Albert or Captain Cousteau with creatures from the bottom of the sea. Other parts of the exhibit were purchased. The archive films shown here display the delivery and assembly of an enormous whale skeleton. The Cathedral of Monaco was built at the end of the 19th century on the site of a church built 600 years earlier. It was named after the Immaculate Conception and designed by Charles Lenormand from snow-white stones in neo-Gothic style. Among its most precious treasures are the work entitled Fra Angelico of Provence and Louis Brea's Pietà. Under the marble floor rest members of the prince's family: Charles, for whom Monte Carlo was named, the scientist Albert I, the ill-fated Grace Kelly, and since 2005, also Rainier III. The country was built on two headlands with a distance of 3.5 kilometers between them. The port of La Condamine is wedged in between. The Prince's Palace stands on the 800-meter-high rock of Monaco. Streets of the Old Town lead to the square in front of the palace, where the spectacular changing of the guard takes place every day at noon. After many conversions, the palace gained its present appearance during the reign of Louis II. At this time, the main entrance and the grand staircase of the inner courtyard were built. Since 1880, only the suites have been modernized. Nice's Old Town, Vieuville, wins hearts not with its sights or grandiose sizes, but with its warm atmosphere. You can find beautiful Renaissance gates, painted facades, and old wall fountains in the narrow streets lined with souvenir shops. Most of its buildings were designed by François Bossiot, with a plaque commemorating him to be found on the wall of his birthplace. Saint Devote Chapel stands under the viaduct spanning a narrow canyon in the corner of the port. It's named after a Christian Corsican from the 3rd century who suffered martyrdom for her religion. In the 11th century, her coffin was nearly stolen, but the saint performed a miracle and the ship burnt in the harbor. This is celebrated every January. In the roundabout in front of the chapel stands a statue of William Grover, who was the winner of the first Grand Prix of Monaco and the founder of the Williams stable. The Principality can thank Charles III for the casino, Albert I for the Oceanographic Museum, Louis II for the Grand Prix, and Prince Rainier III for the Circus Festival. The name of the eastbound upper town climbing up the mountain is Beausoleil. The one of the westbound is Monaghetti. Modern parts of Fontevraud stretch to Nizza, while Monte Carlo Beach reaches Menton. Above the little country rises the mountain La Tête de Chien, which means dog's head in English. Formerly Aise, Roquebrune, and even Menton belonged to the Principality. Roquebrune, Aise, and La Turbie lie nearly among the clouds, higher than mountain roads winding on the viaducts. You can see not only Monaco, but further bays as well. Aise is a mountain village in Provence style which keeps its middle-age facade. Roquebrune boasts the oldest French fortified castle still intact. It was a favorite shelter for many artists, from André Gide to Moreau. It's the Roman monument for which La Turbie is famous, standing near the observatory and visible from afar. Roman legions marched here towards Gaul. Commemorating this event, a huge monument, the Tropez des Alpes, was made. Its semicircular portico stands on the foundation of a 50-meter-high and 28-meter-wide building. The statues of military leaders once stood there, while the statue of the emperor towered atop a circular tower. Today, only plaques and reliefs have remained, but no statues. Shops and guest houses with restaurants are located in the old stone houses of this tiny but spotlessly clean settlement. The roads coming here are called corniches. There are 3 roads running parallel with the coast, running along the steeply sloping hillsides. At the bottom, directly above the rails, runs the inferior corniche. It was built in the 18th century, while the middle one, the moyenne, was built in the 20th. The oldest one is the Grand Corniche, which is also the highest, and its route is identical to Via Aurelia, the old Roman road between Italy and Gaul. The 3-kilometer-long Cape Ferrat Peninsula, with its various shapes, reaches out into the sea at Beaulieu-sur-Mer. On its eastern projection lies Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat, with its harbor, with Villefranche on the western side. Armand Lanoux, Marc Chagall, and Isadora Duncan often spent their holidays here, while Somerset Maugham lived here no less than 40 years. And there are many celebrities who live or spend their vacation here nowadays, too. Because of high stone walls and even higher hedges surrounding the luxury villas, you can only glance at them from a helicopter, as paparazzis do. Only in that way does Cape Ferrat resemble Los Angeles districts where the stars live, like Bel Air or Beverly Hills. While there, tours are organized to take tourists by microbus to the homes of the stars and even provide them with printed maps showing who lives where. Here, that kind of information is top secret. All the more so as renting out modern, fully equipped villas tucked away from the crowds provides a safe income for many French property owners. Villefranche is the most spectacular with its evocative old town and fishing port. In the church, a Maltese knight is buried about whom various stories are told. The name Villefranche refers to free trade rights granted by a count of the Provence. Earlier, the harbor was used not only by fishermen, but by the Sardinian king as a naval port. Today, warships have been replaced by tourist boats and yachts. The dark street, Rue Obscure, is completely covered, which was peculiar at the beginning of the 18th century. This was the location of Emperor Charles V's headquarters when he had negotiations with King Francis I of France in Nice. The area's biggest attraction is the thick-walled citadel of Villefranche-sur-Mer, which was erected in the 16th century and guarded by a moat carved into the cliffs. Nearby stands the little Saint-Pierre Chapel, built by fishermen and decorated by unique Cocteau murals showing 3 parts of the life of St. Peter, the patron saint of fishermen. The peninsula is a real refuge for millionaires and aristocrats. A well-known name can be linked to nearly every fabulous villa. The Villa Kerylos was designed by the famous archaeologist Theodor Reinach, in ancient Greek style, of course. Baroness Aphrousi bequeathed the Rothschild Villa with its extensive art collections to the Académie des Beaux-Arts. On the ground floor, works of Boucher, Fragonard, and Sisley are exhibited under Tiepolo's fresco. On the first floor, among others, you can admire paintings of Monet and Renoir, not to mention the view from here. The former estate of King Leopold II of Belgium is now a zoo, where exotic animals live freely in the bed of a dried-out lake. Its butterfly farm is especially beautiful. All three towns of the peninsula possess their own harbors. The rippling reflections of thousands of white or colorful vessels gives images which were often painted by Raoul Dufy and Henri Matisse. Both of them chose to have their ateliers here in the area. Here on the winding road leading to Nice, the wife of Prince Rainier III of Monaco, the Oscar-winning actress Grace Kelly, suffered a fatal car crash. According to tabloids, the princess's teenage daughter was driving the car without a license when it plunged off a cliff. On the site of the tragic accident, a monument has been erected. An exhibition in his former house commemorates the life of the Nobel Prize winner Maurice Maeterlinck. Among others, he wrote The Blue Bird and was president of the International Writers Association, PEN. The English were the first to explore the Riviera and Nice. Queen Victoria herself spent 6 weeks here every winter. The name of the Promenade d'Anglais, Walk of the English, is no coincidence. Reverend Lewis Way was built by the local unemployed in exchange for food. That busy route became the most lavish promenade of Europe. At number 37 stands the most characteristic building of Nice, the Negresco. At the corner of the well-established hotel with 250 rooms, named after a Roman businessman, stands a doorman dressed similarly to a beefeater, with his top hat and elegant uniform. He assists in parking, arranging to have your luggage carried in and out, and if needed, he even holds an umbrella over your head. In the 70s, Warren Beatty, starring in the film Kaleidoscope, climbed out of the dome here. Does anybody remember that? Or does anybody remember Albert Spaggiati, who made the heist of the century? His story was written by Ken Follett in Under the Streets of Nice. A poet compared Nice to a lively goddess who emerged from the foaming sea under the hot kiss of the sun. The east side of the promenade is not as hectic as the part from Rouen to the Citadel. Sun worshippers, joggers, dog walkers, and roller skaters often while away their hours here. Under the pergolas, couples and pensioners share benches with men in three-piece suits holding briefcases, stealing a few minutes from their workdays to enjoy the sunshine and fresh air. It's exemplary that a beautiful old facade has been preserved here, but behind it, a dangerous building has been demolished and a super-modern hotel and casino constructed in its place. Pedestrian zones behind the Rural Meridian are some of the most pleasant areas in Nice. The complex road system in the car-free zones is lined with colorful shops, little French restaurants, coffee houses, ice cream bars, and restaurants. In spite of the joke that the French eat snails because they don't like fast food, they do have their own fast food chain, Quick. Among restaurants, a lot of Italian pizzerias offer delicious meals made in wood-burning ovens in their huge open kitchens. There are some restaurants serving specialties from Algeria, Morocco, and other North African countries, for example. The spicy sausage merguez is also very popular. Special meals of mostly French provinces, especially Provence and the Alps Maritime region, offer gourmet meals to guests. There are a lot of fish restaurants, so regular customers often debate where the best lobster is served, in Boccaccio or in Grillon. Under the arcades, you can find banks, travel agencies, tourist information centers, exchange offices, shops, and Riviera branch shops of the Paris-based department store Galeries Lafayette. There's a great variety of Provencal products. Ceramics, lathed wooden spice boxes, and small lavender bags scream out at buyers. Curtains and tablecloths await customers, and clothes for children and adults with local patterns hang on the racks. Fabrics are sold by the meter, even by the piece, so that one can sew at home if desired. The center of Nice is the Jardin Albert on the border of the Old Town and adjoining Place Masséna. In the huge green territory named after Albert I of Belgium is an enormous metal arch symbolizing the meridian which runs along here. That was also how the Ruelle Méridien Hotel and Casino, situated in the corner of the park, got their names. The waters of the Triton fountain refresh the long park full of flowers. On the seaside, a memorial commemorates the annexation of Nice to France, known as the Monument du Centenaire. André Masséna, a native son of France, was Napoleon's general. The square named after him is lined with 19th century houses which have green shutters, ochre-colored walls, and arcades. They served as an example for palaces in Nice and Côte d'Azur. Moreover, under French trusteeship, Marrakech patterned its colors after these ideas. The ornamental opera house was built at the end of the 1800s, and just recently a renovation has taken place which is said to be a roaring success. The building's exterior is a slight imitation of the Paris Grand Opera by Garnier. At one time, Berlioz, Rossini, Gounod, and Verdi conducted their own works here, and festive balls were given here in honor of crowned sovereigns. This most interesting triangular-shaped part of the city is bordered by the square, the sea, and the cliffs of the Citadella. The old city is abound with religious buildings, among them the Saint-Jacques and Saint-Augustine Church, the Saint-Réparate Cathedral, the Chapelle de la Miséricordie, l'Annonciation, and de la Croix. Opposite Saint-François de Paul Church is the goal for many chocolate pilgrims. This is where the locals buy genuine French delicacies on any kind of holiday. Pierre Gautier Square is the site of the prefecture building, which was the palace of the Sardinian king more than 300 years ago. Both the Old City Hall and the Lascaris Palace reflect Italian influence, and this feeling is only strengthened by all the mopeds racing around the narrow streets of the Old City. There are two museums in the Old Town. Tourists, however, are more attracted by the commotion in the market. In the meantime, the market is expanded, and besides flowers, vegetables, fruits, and bakery products are also available. The morning catch is displayed on beds of ice: fish, crabs, mussels, as well as silvery, pearly, and pink-colored sea creatures. Gourmets can find their fill of countless kinds of mushrooms, slightly bitter Belgian endive, light green fennel, prickly artichokes and magenta-colored aubergines. Green salads are represented by endive, iceberg, and rocket, and spices such as basil, thyme, and oregano are everywhere. Fruits seem to compete with each other in different colors in either fresh or candied forms. In France, these preparation forms have been developed to perfection. A plate with candied fruits seems to be a work of art. Each food product not only tastes, but looks good too. Stall keepers arrange their products, even the simplest ones, in an artistic way. While the market is open, you can have snacks only in some bistros and coffee houses. But in the afternoon, after the stall keepers have packed their products away, the staff starts to hose down the pavement, and the square completely changes, just like Cinderella before the ball. Tables and chairs are put out, sun shelters are erected, and finally, tables are set. The whole territory of the market turns into a huge restaurant, where only the colors of the awnings and tablecloths differentiate one restaurant from another. French cuisine is refined and varied, but in the restaurants of the seaside towns, fish and seafood play the most important roles. Nice is famous for its flower carnival and, of course, for its flower market, which can be marveled at every afternoon. Practically every season features different flowers and plants with a cavalcade of colors. The compositions of dried flowers are also extremely popular, and you can find them on the walls of many guest houses. Lavender is used to fill little sachets, but is also available in the form of small stuffed dolls. Not only does it exude a wonderful scent, but also serves as a moth repellent. There's no end to the number of natural cosmetics which are produced with lavender or other medicinal herbs using traditional methods. The market is lined with low houses with arches. Passing through 3 arched gates, you can reach the slowly sloping seaside promenade. These houses were built for fishermen and traders, but most of them now function as holiday homes. The name of Nice is derived from the Greek word Nike, which means victory. It was founded by Greek settlers from Marseille. After the Roman Empire collapsed, the town suffered chaotic centuries until it started to flourish again under the county of Provence. The heroine of Nice, Catherine Sigouin, prevented the attack of Barbarossa's pirates. Posterity raised a statue in her honor, while squares were named after native sons Garibaldi and Massena, who were Napoleon's generals. At this place, the emperor spent longer periods between 1794 and 1796. Musée Massena in Rue de France memorializes those events. Originally, the citadel was the acropolis of this Greek settlement. It's possible to reach the top by stairs or by lift. Today, you can see the 16th century bastion tower, but the awesome bastion itself no longer exists. It was destroyed by the English Marshal of Duke Berwick in 1706 by orders of Louis XIV. In its place, a terraced restaurant, a playground, and an artificial waterfall have been built, and ruins of a medieval cathedral were discovered. The monk poet Delille was enthusiastic about this place. He couldn't forget its history, fragrances, for example of thyme, lemon, and lavender, its colors, green olive trees and blue sea, or the view. Looking towards the southwest, you can view the old harbor. Primarily enormous ocean liners and scheduled passenger ships appear in the harbor, which was deepened 300 years ago. Opposite the harbor stands the monument commemorating casualties of the Great War made by Ciessal and Janot. Saint-Paul-de-Vence is a medieval towered town with gray stone walls standing atop a mountain, like an island having emerged from the sea. It's surrounded by hilly country, which is covered with a blanket of orange and olive trees, cypresses, grapevines, and lavender. This unique color cavalcade has inspired artists for a long time who often meet here. The town itself is considered as the prototype of fortified Provence settlements, not showing anything to the outside world, simply hiding bashfully behind their thick walls. So it's understandable what admiration visitors feel after getting inside. On the main square, we're greeted by a coffee house. In front of it, a strolling guitar player serenades listeners with his ballads, playing pétanque. He has such a big nose and huge belly that he could be the twin brother of Gérard Depardieu as well. Nowadays, there are few descendants of the old tradition of chocolateurs who are more than simple street musicians. The span of the Provence, where it begins and ends, is always a point of debate, as well as where the Riviera has its ends. In practice, the Provence is the hinterland of the Côte d'Azur, something which is evident by the characteristic products that you can buy everywhere. In the municipal guest book can be seen the photos and autographs of Bourvil, Yves Montand, David Niven, Sophia Loren, Gina Lollobrigida, Charles Bronson, and Yul Brynner, plus the dynamic signatures or rough scratches of Chagall, Picasso, Leger, Matisse, and Kandinsky. During the war, the poet Jacques Prévert sought shelter here. He also hid the Hungarian-born composer József Kozma. Among actors, the couple Montan Signoret and Larry Hagman of Dallas fame had villas here. Everyone who was anyone in modern art came here. In the 1970s, it was the favorite place of Jean-Paul Sartre, who often went to Menton just for the famous fish soup. Those who have wandered the streets covered in mosaics of pebbles in the cool of 16th century walls and buildings, who have inhaled the fragrance of lavender and have peeped into small galleries, catching sight of works by painters who've lived or are still living here, will hardly forget St. Paul's constancy. But despite this, it's able to revive itself every year and every season. It's the grave of Marc Chagall which attracts visitors in the small, tranquil South Cemetery hiding under evergreens. Most people visit for the sake of the Mate Foundation Modern Art Museum, which was opened by André Malraux, who wrote about it in his book Picasso's Mask. But even the place itself has its own charm, which inspired artists not only to live, but also to create here. Kandinsky, Leger, Bonnard, and Miro all painted here. The Golden Pigeon restaurant has a great cuisine, which of course is pretty characteristic of any restaurant in the Provence and on the Côte d'Azur, but it's not everywhere you can see paintings of Matisse, Chagall, Utrillo, and Vlaminck on the walls. If you open your eyes and heart while approaching the exhibited works in this town of fine art, you're guaranteed a unique experience. Not only the works of masters, but also lesser-known, mostly young painters and graphic artists are on display here. Most of their works are of real artistic value, but they're still inexpensive just because their creators are unknown, so they are brilliant as an investment. Originally built as a shrine in Romanesque style, St. Paul's Church was later converted into a three-naved Gothic church. Its belfry, which rises above the city wall surrounding the hills, was built only in 1740. There's a genuine Tintoretto among the church's art treasures. Place de la Grande Fontaine, with its arched houses and very large well with its stone urn, became the genuine symbol of the city. Thanks to painters and filmmakers who visited the place, its image has become well known all around the world. It can be seen on the cover of The Olive Farm by Carol Drinkwater and on many photo album covers too. Anytime from spring to autumn, you find hustle-bustle in the narrow streets. It's strange that even so, all visitors feel that only they get to know the city, each person individually. St. Paul opens only for them. Only they admire a house wall overgrown by flowers, an ancient stone arch, and a rust-eaten door handle. Only they can see the beauty in a sundial built into a wall a long time ago. The same feelings obsess amateur painters and art students who many times choose absurd places, let's say the top of a stone wall, and try to grasp the impossible. It would be better if those with a passion for photography took a lot of film or had higher storage capacity, and they should also keep their evenings free of engagements. Dusk starts to fall, and there are still so many sights to be seen. The Bastion Promenade provides you with a good view over hillsides which are being built up more and more. Maybe a copy of The Thinker by Rodin is brooding over how many green areas still survive the next few decades. The surrounding hillsides resemble a splendid old gobelin into which the secrets of nature have been woven. Behind us, the Estoril Mountains, in front of us, the sea. In clear weather, you can see all the way to Antibes. This special building complex, called Marina Baia d'Angers, can be seen on the Antibes coast from afar. Both extensions of these wavy buildings represent modern French architecture. Their apartments can be bought or rented. The name of Antibes is of Greek origin. Antipolis meant the opposite town, in other words, the town which stands on the other coast of Ange Bay, opposite Nice. Later, those two cities became each other's opponents. That was when the fortress of Antibes was built. Antibes can boast as many famous persons as any other cities on the Côte d'Azur. The young Picasso, who wasn't famous then, rented a room at the end of town. He decorated its somber gray walls with his own frescoes. The owner asked for compensation. Picasso said, "I'm even paid for frescoes in Paris." The owner answered, "For those? Don't take me for a fool." Picasso's paintings are exhibited in the museum of the Old Town Fort. In front of the market hall, flea markets are held at the weekends. Peter Mayle remembers his experiences at such markets in his world-famous trilogy on the Provence. He wrote that they wanted to look at the pieces of family stories which were saved by junk dealers from attics in the Provence. There was everything: faded sepia postcards and old cotton smocks, utensils, enormous salmon-colored corsets, silver jewels, dark tureens, chipped enamel cards advertising mustache masks, irons, and potties, Art Nouveau brooches, and coffeehouse ashtrays, old anthologies, and the inevitable Louis XIV-style nearly perfect chairs with one leg missing. The market hall is the citadel of gastronomy. Vegetables, fruits, and meats are of the customarily high French quality. Stall keepers sell mushrooms gathered in the nearby forests, as well as homemade jams and honey. Many of them make cheese and Norman salted butter after they themselves have milked their animals. There's an ancient custom of dried fruit, but candied fruits are even more characteristic, and they preserve their genuine fruit flavors. Olives are sold to be served as starters or put into wine biscuits or even a spiced cream called tapis, which resembles Italian pesto. Those who feel hunger pangs while shopping can satisfy their hunger and quench their thirst at a brasserie. The smell of freshly baked bread leads you to the bakery, where they sell not only crispy baguettes but peasant bread, sandwiches, and tempting cakes. The little palace of the city hall leans against the city wall. The church of Antibes is still called Cathedral, in spite of the fact that the city hasn't been a bishopric for a long time. Its altarpiece was made by the same Louis Braille who painted the Pietà in the Cathedral of Monaco. The walls of the church include Roman fragments too. The thick walls of the building and the belfry provided protection against attacks from the sea. Napoleon was imprisoned in Fort Carré for a short time. Monet, on the other hand, was captured by the color of the sea, which resembled molten gold, and spent his summers here voluntarily with pleasure. Marconi experimented with the radio here, and a great number of writers and poets also liked the city. Jules Verne called it home for 3 years, and Graham Greene lived here for 20. Maupassant, Prévert, and Anatole France spent their vacations here. The city suffered a cruel fate. The Romans were followed by the Visigoths, the Burgundians, the Lombards, and the Saracens. In the Middle Ages, the bishopric moved from here to Grasse, where since then the bishop has resided. Francis I, who erected the town walls of St. Paul, surrounded Antibes with walls too. Since then, French kings have considered it a militarily important fort. The sights of Antibes can be found in the old town, which lies in the shade of high city walls winding along the coast. Between the old town walls are the Napoleon Museum and the Archaeology Museum, reminding us of Greek and Roman times. On the Cap d'Antibes, at the tip of the peninsula, stands the lighthouse with a light which can reach 40 kilometers, that is, 25 miles. A huge number of lazy cats bask in the sunshine and warmth reflected from the stone walls. Some of them can't move because they were made by ceramists with a sense of humor, who put them into niches. The thick-walled fort, which is integral with the church, was called Grimaldi Castle. It has a Roman tower, and its other parts follow that style, although they were built in the 16th century. In the corner of the port at the end of the town wall, the beach of Antibes lures bathers. The high stone wall protectively surrounds the sandy, round basin. In a heat wave, the tiny, cozy beach is crowded, but you can easily go by car, scooter, or bike to the pebble beach of Baie Ange or the sandy one of Juan Lapine. Fort Carré lies north of the harbor beyond the forest of masts. The somber object stands on a neck of land. The star-shaped wall was designed by Vauban on the site of the former rectangular fortress. The Carré is still a military area, but the area has been advanced to become a municipal sport track. The name of Cannes, together with the neighboring Cagnes-sur-Mer and Le Cannet, comes from the Latin equivalent of Cain. The Roman settlement of rich patricians was destroyed during the Great Migration. Across from the coast of Cannes lie the Lorraine Islands in the sea, which are famous for their mysterious prisoner, the Man in the Iron Mask, whose character inspired Victor Hugo and Dumas. A monastery once stood here, and its priests operated the only lighthouse in the area. They built a little fort on top of the Chevalier Mountain in the old town of Cannes and hid fishermen and their families here to protect them from the attack of the Saracens, then later from pirates. At the end of the Middle Ages, the fort was defended first by the Knights of the Temple, later by the Knights of Malta. In La Souquet, the old town, the La Castre Museum was established, which doesn't seem to be able to decide what it really wants to show its visitors. In any case, for those interested in local history, it's worth it to have a look, if nothing else, then for the old paintings of Cannes. Cannes remained church property until the Great French Revolution. In 1834, the cholera epidemic devastated the Provence. Traveling to Italy, Lord Chancellor of England, Lord Brougham, couldn't cross the quarantine, which was ordered by the governor of Nice. He returned and stayed in Cannes. He loved it so much that he later settled here. The fresh air had such a good effect on him that he died at the ripe old age of 90 after a heavy dinner. A life-size statue was erected by the city commemorating the aristocrat who recommended the country to the aristocracy. Once it happened that 6 Grand Dukes, 1 Maharaja, and a Rothschild sat at the same card table in the casino. The Hôtel de Ville, the compelling building of City Hall, stands in the west corner of the main square lined with sycamore trees opposite the old port, the Vieux Port. With a merry-go-round and a bandstand, the square is mainly the site of the locals' favorite ball-throwing game called pétanque. In the middle of the 1800s, a flower market was also situated here, as well as 1 or 2 taverns where fishermen's fresh catches were made into chef d'oeuvre and served with plenty of house wine. During the film festival, filmmakers sneak here to eat some good French snacks, which they often eat here sitting on the square benches under the shade of the firewall, on which well-known figures of the film industry have been painted. You can buy freshly baked croissants and café au lait or le petit déjeuner, which means a humble breakfast, in the little coffee houses with terraces lining the square. A divine fragrance from bakeries wedged between coffee houses saturates the square. Little sandwich bars mean alternatives to fast food restaurants, and though they might not be cheaper, at least they offer healthier and more stylish snacks. The main ingredients are vegetables, various lettuce types, and olives, then different kinds of excellent French ham and cheese, as well as a great variety of fish and crabs. Besides the fact that Cannes is a distinguished resort with excellent climate, its real fame was gained by the film industry. Since the Festival Palace was built in 1949, it's become a real European Hollywood. The Cannes Film Festival, held every May, is a dignified event. It's a great honor to win the first prize, the Palme d'Or, but Cannes is also an important film market and has other special social events. The red carpet is rolled out several times every year. In order to exploit the Festival Palace, other programs are organized as well. In spring and autumn, fairs of TV and video films are held. In other months, they arrange a festival of commercials, a pop music fair, and recently computer meetings and conferences. In summer, those interested can admire the newest yachts. It's customary in Hollywood, but here as well, to make handprints of the stars. It gives an opportunity for the media to deal with actors and actresses when there's no other reason. Tourists can have the feeling of being within arm's length of French film stars, from Depardieu to Sophie Marceau and Belmondo. The gorgeous opening parties of festivals are held at either the Majestic Hotel or the Palm Beach Casino. Once a tent was put up for thousands of people, all for the sake of a film. Cote, named after a cross which stood here in old times, is just the same as the Promenade in Nice. This beach promenade lined with palm trees is where all the luxury hotels are, the Majestic, the Carlton, the Martinez, and the Hilton, as well as a great number of luxury boutiques and elegant restaurants. Cannes was a favorite place for Bavarian King Ludwig, Edward VII, and other rulers, but writers and other artists liked it too. Ferenc Molnár, Prosper Mérimée, and Maupassant spent a lot of time here. Gérard Philippe was born in Cannes, but he spent his short life in Paris and Saint-Tropez. The festival brings new actors and actresses as guests, and many of them have bought villas in the neighborhood. Often, businessmen and film producers from overseas decide to stay here for a week or two to enjoy what the Côte d'Azur has to offer after their long trip. Cannes is a city of festivals and conferences, making it a center for hotels and restaurants. Some restaurants are so famous that those who can afford it travel here from Paris or Italy to have lunch or dinner. Royal Grey and Le Caveau have restaurants recognized in gastronomic circles. The Martinez Hotel offers an excellent restaurant, which is of course called La Palme d'Or. On the north and west sides of Vieux-Port, there are restaurants all in a row. Among them, the best ones are the La Mer Besson, which offers specialties from La Provence, and the Gaston Gastonnet fish restaurant. You can find many international restaurants. The most popular ones here are those which serve Vietnamese and Moroccan dishes. In France, food is a top topic, but fashion and dressing are close seconds. Probably every recognized fashion house in the world, especially the French ones, are represented here in the European capital of films. Under the palm trees on the Cote, Ferraris, Rolls-Royces, and Bentleys zoom around. Uniformed drivers take their bosses from one boutique to another. Cannes has two sides. While ordinary persons live their workadays in the streets, behind the Avenue de Grasse and the Boulevard d'Alsace, the district between Cote and Rue d'Antibes is luxury personified. During the festivals, there's some kind of party in the hotels every night. Opening party, premiere, press conference with dinner, birthday or other anniversary, pool party, farewell. Of course, hotels and restaurants have their own beaches where their guests can enjoy the blessed sunshine accompanied by caviar and French champagne. The separate parts of the coast are differentiated from each other by their big umbrellas with different colors and emblems. Wooden sidewalks lead to the sea across the very hot sand. Not only sunbathers and swimmers come here. Film companies, which have apartments or offices in one of the hotels, often invite their clients into their beach tents. While having a light lunch, a glass of wine, or a cup of coffee, deals worth millions are concluded and contracts signed. Even when the water is too cold to swim, the folding chairs are always occupied. Sunbathing on the Côte d'Azur is nearly always possible. In France, you often feel that everything is about meals, especially in the evening, when at dusk you can see the atmospheric yellowish lights of torches and lampions. Pavements are cleaned to be immaculate, chairs and tables are placed, then the tables are set. Of course, waiters and waitresses set single-colored damask tablecloths, cloth napkins, and silverware, because dinner is proper, even in a simple place. You'll only find paper tablecloths and paper napkins in sandwich bars. The steep and curving Rue Saint-Antoine, which leads to the La Souquet, changes into a gastronomy center only in the evening. In the daytime, it's an empty, narrow, cobbled street with its shutters closed. But in the evening, when the shutters are opened loudly, the whole street is full of sounds, smells, and activity. There's a restaurant where ashlar-covered arches remind us of caves in the flickering lights of candles. There's a super modern bar, the walls of which are colorful and equipped with colorful furniture. There's a rustic pancake bar where the well-known giant pancakes are sold. In traditional restaurants, pies are served as a starter because they've been known here since the Middle Ages. This is followed by a meat pot, which means broth full of everything. Fish, vegetable, and onion soup are popular as well. Of course, you can find as many different recipes as there are restaurants. You can grill or fry not only chicken or pork, but beef, lamb, goat, rabbit, and game as well. The French serve any grilled or fried meat with sauce, usually containing some wine. There seems to be the greatest variety of fish and seafood. Maybe the tastiest is grilled sunfish, broiled sole. The French have a notorious sweet tooth and often end their meals with chocolate mousse. Those who would like to eat more substantially can try Normand apple cake on hot evenings, ice cream, or sorbet hits a spot. Originally, the town wasn't bigger than the bay, which was surrounded by two headlands and stopped at the rails. In recent years, Cannes has become the second most important conference center after Paris, so it needs more accommodations. The nearby settlements have become part of it. New residential districts have been built: La Boca, La Californie, and Super Cannes. Then residential areas and apartments appeared. Houses climb the foot of Esterel Mountain, and there's only a little time before the city absorbs Mandelieu and La Napoule. Located behind La Boca, Mandelieu has a small airport suitable for private jets. The beach, protected by 4 small coves along de Gaulle Avenue, is frequented mostly by those who failed to find space on the beach at Cannes. On summer weekends, both Parisians, as well as the French from the countryside, infest the resorts, and at such times, it's impossible to find even space enough for a towel on the coast. La Napoule marks the end of the 32-kilometer-long Corniche d'Or. At the foot of the fortress, 1,500 aquatic vehicles can lie at anchor at one time in the harbor, which spreads over more than 10 hectares. Smaller motorboats have their places in the channels perpendicular to the sea. The castle fortress was built in the 14th century and can easily be seen from afar by the 3 stubby towers. After World War I, Henry Cloos, an American sculptor, bought it. The museum exhibited his life work, and the foundation established by his heirs organized various art and classical music events. Hungarian writer Endre Lazar Bayomi wrote a book about Côte d'Azur in which the following may be read. The multifarious Côte d'Azur gets a new look from Cannes westwards to Saint-Raphael. Large mountains disappear for a while, and the scene is dominated by the Estoril mountain range in the background, which is one of the most beautiful sights in all of the Provence. Dark red cliffs reach the sea, and the contradiction of blue and purple is stupendous. The wild and imperial Estoril is torn by abysses. The coast is capricious. The sea breaks into the mountain into the sea. Tiny coves lace the coast. Saint-Tropez. Is there anybody who doesn't think of the film about the gendarme of Saint-Tropez when they hear the name of the city? Comedies starring Louis de Funès made the city fashionable. It was built on the northern tip of the Camarade headland. In the summers of the 1960s, Brigitte Bardot, Roger Vadim, Romy Schneider, Michel Morgan, and other famous French film stars stayed here. In the Middle Ages, Bailly de Suffren and General Allard lived there, but they battled far from their hometown. Here, peace dwelled, and only fishermen struggled with the sea creatures and with making a living. Maupassant wrote about Saint-Tropez before the turn of the century. Saint-Tropez is one of these charming, simple daughters of the sea, one of those modest little towns growing in the sea like a shell, nourished by fish and sea air. Then he mentioned the smell of fish, burnt tar, seawater, and boats. He compared sardine scales on the cobblestones to pearls. The idyllic picture grasped artists too. Paul Signac settled here, but Bonnard and Matisse also came here often. The writer Colette lived here. François Mitterrand, film director René Clair, and photo artist David Hamilton had villas here. Everybody wanted to vacation here, to have lunch and dinner in such places as the Senechier with its red parasols. The restaurant had another name, Gorilla, after its proprietor's nickname. On the pier of the harbor, a monument was erected to commemorate French sailors. Behind the bastion of the old harbor, a little pebble beach is hidden away, La Ponche, where mothers of the neighborhood call out the windows to their children splashing on the beach. This little bay, still full of homey atmosphere with wash drying out on the line, will soon find its way into the hearts of tourists. The square with the sycamore tree could seem familiar to you from many films. We almost expect to see the characteristic, though not exactly dashing, figure of Louis de Funès to appear among pétanque players. There's a legend that says that Emperor Nero had Tropez beheaded because he refused to deny his Christian faith. His corpse was put on a barge which drifted into the sea. This is a wandering motif which can be read in many forms on the coasts of the Mediterranean and its islands. It's profane, but a martyr saint gave his name to the most eccentric place in the Riviera. Pictures featuring the story of the saint can be seen in the local Baroque church built in the 1800s. It was first mentioned in writing at the time of Constantine the Great. Later, you can read about the attacks of pirates and about the agreement between Raphael Galeazzo and the Count of the Provence. Raphael promised to build a fort and a town here in exchange for a tax exemption. The history of Saint-Tropez is well documented in the local history exhibition, which is in the fort. As the fort is huge, there's a naval exhibition as well, so you can enter two places with one admission ticket. The most glorious event in the history of the city is that in 1637 the defenders succeeded in driving away 21 Spanish man-of-wars. It's now those tourists who come here in the middle of June who can profit the most from this battle. At that time, a public festival, the Bravade, is held to commemorate this battle. Musketeers in festive uniforms march and shoot their muskets and play the drums and the trumpet. The march is supplemented by persons throwing flags, walking on stilts, and acting. An open fair makes the festive atmosphere perfect. You don't have to wait for one of the festivals, because according to the fans, life itself here is a non-stop carnival.